At number 2, you got Mr. Giant himself. He did it all. Play running back, play corner, defense, Hall of Famer, 8-time Pro Bowler. You can't beat this guy. This is Mr. Giant himself. He really should be the logo. All right, Giants fans, welcome back to Big Blue Red Crew Podcast. I'm Zeke, and this is our weekly installments of Power Rankings. This week we got the running backs. Let's get right into it. First up at number 10, we got Otis Anderson. Look, I struggled to put Otis Anderson on this list, to be quite honest with you, because most of his damage was done with the St. Louis Rams. But I can't deny that he has 2 Super Bowl rings and he was a 1990s Super Bowl MVP. Otis Anderson only played with us for 6 years, but his best year was in 1989 when he rushed for 1,223 yards. He did rack up a lot of touchdowns with us in those few years that he was with us, but still, most of his damage was done with the St. Louis Rams. At number 9, we have Ahmad Bradshaw. Ahmad Bradshaw played with us for 6 years. He had 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons in 2010 and 2012. He came on the scene from Marshall in 07 and had that one long-ass run against the Buffalo Bills to help us make a playoff run. At number 8, we got Saquon Barkley. Now, truth be told, if Saquon stays with the Giants, I think he gets the number 1 spot of all time. But Saquon's been with us for 5 years so far. He has 4,200 yards, over 4,200 yards on the ground, 29 touchdowns. His first year, he was Offensive Rookie of the Year, also 2-time Pro Bowler. He's been really our only offense for the past 5 years. He did get hurt that 1 year, but still, Saquon Barkley, number 8. If he's going to be with us for the next 4 or 5 years, I really see him getting the number 1. He's a phenomenal running back, phenomenal talent. At number 7, we got Brandon Jacobs. Brandon Jacobs been with the Giants for 8 years. He had 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons, 07 and 08. 08, he was fucking unstoppable. He also had 15 touchdowns that season. Derek Ward had 1,000 yards that season as well. 2-time Super Bowl champ, helped us big time in 07. 2011, not so much in 2011 as he only had 571 yards, but he was the tone setter. Okay, he was gonna pop you right in the fucking mouth. Go back to 2007, Green Bay Packers against New York Giants in Lambeau Field. He trucks Charles Woodson like the second play of the game. He was the tone setter. You knew you were playing Giants football when you looked at Brandon Jacobs. He was that guy. We haven't had a bruiser like Brandon Jacobs in quite some time, and to be honest with you, I missed. He was the punch to Tiki's lightning. He was what Ron Dane was supposed to be. That's what Brandon Jacobs was. He was what Ron Dane was supposed to be. He was that thunder. He came with the punch. Brandon Jacobs will forever be one of my favorite running backs of all time. He came with the leadership and the mouth to go with it. At number 6, we got Joe Morris. All right, so Joe Morris, 2-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, 1-time Super Bowl champ in the 1986 season. Also 1986 season, 1,500 yards, 14 touchdowns. He was fucking phenomenal. Pretty much all his career, he's been with us. He had 1 season with the Cleveland Browns, but we don't really count that. With us, he had over 5,200 yards and 48 touchdowns. He was a great running back throughout the whole 80s decade for the New York Giants. Joe Morris at number 6. At number 5, we got a guy named Eddie Price. Don't know too much about him. He played with the Giants for 6 years between 1950 and 1955. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro. Didn't get a championship ring, if I remember correctly. In 1951, he led the league with 971 yards off of 271 carries. That's a lot of fucking carries for a running back, especially back then. 7 touchdowns to go with that. In his career, he has 3,292 yards with the Giants and 20 touchdowns. Look, it was a different game back in the 50s, okay? More physical, more taxing. Running backs weren't lasting that damn long. And he played a good 6 years with the Giants. That's why he's at number 5. At number 4, we got another old head here in the 50s and the 60s. We got Alex Webster. Alex Webster was Mr. Giants at one time. He was a running back, a fullback, but he also coached after he retired playing football for the New York Giants. He had almost 1,200 carries for 4,600 yards and 39 touchdowns. Again, playing running back in this era was not friendly to the body. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler, 1-time NFL champ, and in 1970, he got Coach of the Year. Yeah, he was good and like that. Alex Webster at number 4. At number 3 on this list, we got Rodney Hampton. Look, Hampton is the second leading rusher in Giants history with 6,897 yards off of 1,800 touches, and 49 touchdowns. He played all his career, 1990 through 97, with the New York Giants, and had 5 1,000-yard rushing seasons and 3 double-digit touchdown rushing seasons as well. And in 1990, he won a Super Bowl with the Giants his rookie year. He was a great running back in the 90s with the Giants. Phenomenal. Before Tiki eventually took over. Great running back right there. At number 2, you got Mr. Giant himself. He did it all. Play running back, play corner, defense, Hall of Famer, 8-time Pro Bowler. You can't beat this guy. This is Mr. Giant himself. He really should be the logo. Talking about Frank Gifford. Frank Gifford didn't pile up on the rushing yardage alone because he was also a great wide receiver. He had 850 carries for 3,600 yards and 34 touchdowns. But he also had 5,000 yards as a receiver to go with it. I mean, he was Mr. New York Giants. This is who you wanted to be like. And he was the pretty boy of the league at the time. He represented the league as a pretty boy. He was the face of the NFL back in this era. That's who all the kids wanted to be like back in the day, was Frank Gifford. He was really that guy. Not only that, the motherfucker, Frank Gifford almost died on the football field in one hit. I think he got clotheslined and like almost fucking took his head off. Like he was out of the league for like 2 years. From 1960 to 1962, he didn't even play. I mean, this is exactly who the Giants was built around. This guy right here, Mr. Pretty Boy himself, Frank Gifford. All that being said, he's number 2. And that leaves us with only one more spot left. And y'all should know who that goes to. The number 1 running back in Giants history is none other than Tiki Barber. Gotta give it to Tiki. Tiki Barber ran his whole career with New York Giants from 1997 to 2006, coming out of UVA. Has over 6 1,000-yard rushing seasons, over 10,000 yards rushing altogether, 55 touchdowns, and was a dual threat in the receiving game where he had 5,183 yards as a receiving back. He's 12th on the list all-time all-purpose yardage. How Tiki Barber is not in the Hall of Fame, I'm gonna do a video on that. And it's a goddamn shame, to be honest with you. That man deserves to be in the Hall of Fame because he earned it and he got the numbers to prove it. I will never forget 05 season. He rushed for 1,800 yards and 9 touchdowns. I thought he was gonna get the MVP that season. He was an all-pro back that year. I thought he was gonna get MVP. But it went to Shaun Alexander. There was some real competition during Tiki's era. And Tiki should have got MVP at least once. But you had Shaun Alexander. You had LT, LaDainian Thompson, not Lawrence Taylor. You had Emmitt Smith still running hard. I mean, you had some real hitters. And Tiki really didn't get his props. To me, he's a Hall of Famer. I think Tiki had 3 more good years in him. Easily. He was a fucking phenomenal back. All right, Giants fan, this is Zeke with Big Blue Red Crew Podcast. This is our weekly installment on power rankings. This week was running backs. Let me know in the comment section, did I fuck up the list? Who would you had at number 1? Frank Gifford? Would you have put Frank Gifford at number 1? What about Joe Morris? I think Tiki deserves to be number 1 and should always be number 1 until somebody unseats him. But let me know in the comments, where's your list? Who's your running back order? As always, like, comment, subscribe. This is Zeke with Big Blue Red Crew Podcast. I'm out. Peace.